Today, we're going to go over some PowerPoint best practices, but I wanted to take a slightly different angle on it and drop in some information about Copilot as well, because I know some of you have Copilot and some of you don't. When you first open PowerPoint, you're in the Backstage view. From here, you can choose to create a blank presentation or use any of the Microsoft templates or themes that are available. If you don't see a theme that you like in the first few suggestions, you can click on More Themes on the right side of the screen and scroll through the different categories or type in a search term. Our first best practice is to use a professional template to start a presentation. This helps you maintain a cohesive look and feel that has consistent fonts, colors, and layouts. Your company might provide a brand template, or you can choose one of the Microsoft options. For example, this pitch deck has a title slide, sections, images that are already inserted, and different layouts. There is some sample information to get you started, but all you need to do is swap it out with your information. Let's go back to the Backstage view, and this time I'm going to choose Create with Copilot. A dialog box will open where you will enter a prompt up to 2,000 characters, and you can add up to 5 files for Copilot to reference. When I click the pay-per-click button for reference files, I can select from a list of recently used files, or I can click the up arrow button to search for files in the cloud. This means they are saved in SharePoint, Teams, or OneDrive. You cannot attach files from the computer's hard drive. From my OneDrive, I'm going to select this Word file called PowerPoint Tips. Now, normally I would give Copilot a prompt to define the style and tone that should be used. However, today I'm just going to run it based on the file alone so you can see what it can do with minimal prompting. Of course, the better the prompt, the better the outcome will be. Before we run the prompt, I'd like you to notice the section called Presentation Design. Copilot is going to use a standard presentation template, but you can click on the Change Design button to choose a different option. There are 3 categories: Recent, Your Organization, or Microsoft 365. Since this is a test environment, all I have are the Microsoft 365 templates to choose from. So to get started, I'm just going to select Archway Design and choose Select Design. Now I'm going to go up to the top right corner of the dialog box and click the sideways arrow to run the prompt. What's happening now is Copilot is analyzing the Word file and creating suggested sections and slide topics. When it's done, we can review the information and move the sections around, delete ones we don't want, or insert a prompt for a new section. At the bottom of the pane, it will give you a slide estimate. In this case, it is 14 out of 40 maximum. This does not mean you are limited to 40 slides in your presentation. Rather, Copilot will only create 40 for you. Now I'm going to click Generate. The actual slides are being created to include content from your prompt and/or file, speaker notes, transition animations, and images. Depending on the complexity of your information and the number of slides, this can take a few minutes. When Copilot is done, you will see thumbnails for the suggested slides. You can choose to keep them or delete all of them. I will choose Keep. Now, the interesting thing is the default layout is in Slide Sorter view. So to change it to the normal view, go to the ribbon at the top of the screen, click the View tab, and then click Normal on the far left-hand side of the screen. Now that I've reviewed the design, it's not really the one that I want to use. So to try another one, go to the Design tab in the ribbon at the top of the screen. Click on the Theme dropdown and choose another option. In this case, I'll choose a darker theme with an easier to read font. Now we have information in this slide deck to use as our example for best practices. Let's go over what some of those things are. We already discussed using templates. The next best practice is to group related content together. One of the ways that you can do this is by creating a title slide in between each section. So for example, in this deck, we have tips about creating design and visual consistency, clarity and readability, enhancing engagement with visuals, organizing for flow and audience engagement, and final recommendations for an impactful presentation. Sections are useful so the presenter can see what's coming up next and when a topic change is going to happen. Sometimes I use this as a visual cue to stop and ask if anyone has questions or comments. Additionally, when others are reviewing the slide deck, they can use the section slides to jump to the content that is meaningful to them. Another best practice is to keep your slides clear and concise and to use bullet points. The bullets are easier for people to read and comprehend, especially when they are trying to follow the slides and listen to you at the same time. A common rule of thumb is to have no more than 7 bullets per slide and 3 to 7 words. Several organizations I've worked with have a 7 by 7 rule, meaning no more than 7 bullets and no more than 7 words. Now, in this example, Copilot chose to put everything in a paragraph format instead of bullets. However, we can make Copilot fix this by selecting the text and then going to the bottom left corner of the text box to click the little pencil icon and then choose Make it a list. Now we have 4 concise list items instead of 8 text blocks. Now I want this to be a bullet list, so I can go to the home ribbon and then select bullets. A related best practice is to put your most important information on the slide and everything else can go into the speaker's notes. When you are in the presenter's view, the notes will be visible and you can use them to make sure that you don't forget important information. Because I use Copilot to create this first draft of the slide deck, the speaker's notes were automatically populated based on information that was already in my Word document. If you're doing this manually because you don't have Copilot, you can type in anything that you need to in this section. While reviewing the slides, I realized that one best practice is missing, and that is guidance on how to use animations. So we're going to insert a new slide. If you're using standard PowerPoint, place your cursor in between the slides where you want the new one to go. Then on the Home tab in the Slide section, click the drop-down for New Slide. In this example, we will pick Title and Content. If you have Copilot, select New Slide with Copilot instead of clicking New Slide. When the prompt window appears, enter instructions describing the slide's topic. Specify important details such as the layout you want, for example, title and content, and any specific content you'd like included. This is a pretty good start, but I think it needs a little visual interest, so I'm going to use design suggestions and pick one with a picture in it. Now we have our missing best practice slide that tells us to minimize visual distractions, choose subtle effects, and avoid using flashy animations unless you're really trying to create a strong emphasis. To see this advice in practice, let's turn on presentation mode. As I scroll through the slides, you'll notice that most of them have a subtle fade effect between slides. However, on the final recommendations slide, each of the points come in one by one so that I can emphasize them as I'm wrapping up my presentation. So there you go. There's a few PowerPoint best practices with a little bit of Copilot sprinkled in to speed up the process for those of you who have M365 Copilot licenses. Now, blending them together was a bit of an experiment, so let me know in the comments if you found that helpful or if it would have been better to keep them as 2 separate topics. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.